So welcome once again to Living in the 21st Century. Joining me today is Monique, Vice President for SEDFOP Inc. Also joining me today is Heather Kennedy-Claque. She is a conflict coach, mediator, facilitator, advocate, program evaluator. Ladies, I want to welcome you to Living in the 21st Century. It's a pleasure having you here today. And my first question goes out to you, Heather. We understand there's some broken promises back there in Rhode Island. Could you elaborate a little bit and tell us what's going on?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So throughout the country, a lot of states have something called a Promise Scholarship, which is an excellent program that helps students who graduate high school complete an associate's degree, and the funding is paid for by the state. In Rhode Island, however, that promise doesn't apply to students with disabilities who need an accommodation of a changed schedule, shortened schedule, or a flexible schedule while they attend school. If they can't meet the requirements of the scholarship, which is full-time or improved three-quarter time in 2 years, they have to pay for school, unlike their typical peers, which is unfair and a broken promise to a whole population.
Okay. So this seems that there's a very complicated situation when it comes to disabled people who may be a little bit slow in learning, and it is not too favorable to them to really function in an atmosphere like this. Now, is any state representative working on any bills pertaining to this situation?
Yeah, so I reached out a couple months ago to Michael Chippendale and explained to him the problem and asked for his help. Since then, he's been working with me and some other parents, and he introduced Bill H5605 in the House of Representatives. And we're waiting on the number for the bill in the Senate. And he's been doing an amazing job. He really understands how important this is. He also is an individual with a disability, and he's been really working behind the scenes, like with the post-secondary director, to get this changed, because it's not just unfair, it's illegal.
Okay. And how did this really impact your life? And how do you actually discover this issue?
So a couple months ago, I was looking at the community college with my daughter, Brianna. She is a disabled individual who's on an IEP, and she's had a rough couple years. We knew her team, her mental health team, the school team, and I and her, that she wouldn't be able to start off full time. She would really need to dip her toes in the water, because when you leave high school and you don't have an IEP, you lose a lot of services and accommodations. And so this is a real test for her and many others. When I reached out to the college disability office and I asked about a waiver or an accommodation for her to go less load, they informed me that that wasn't possible and that she had to complete school in 2 years or pay. And then in that time frame too, we also found out that there's language in the law that requires a student to be 19. And a lot of students with IEPs graduate high school later. So that also pushes out a whole nother group of individuals who can't access a scholarship.
Okay. So Monique, tell me, how is it important, or why should it be this important at this point of time to have this problem fixed urgently? Now, when it comes to education, there are all kind of threatening problems to schools, whether it's in charter schools, private schools, whatever the case may be. It always seems to have a problem surrounding education. And we know for a fact that the atmosphere is not conducive for everyone to learn at the same speed or rate. There are some who are going to be slow, who need more adequate attention to get through what they're studying. Elaborate a little bit, Monique, and tell me why is it important at this juncture that this is a problem above all problems that has to be fixed?
Well, I would start to say it's a problem because it's not being inclusive. And whenever it comes to education, we should really look at inclusivity. It also is a problem because, as Heather mentioned, it is illegal if you're a program that's being federally funded, you have to be in compliance with federal law. And the federal law is followed by the ADA, which is the American Disabilities Act. So it's essentially illegal for them to benefit from federal funding and not be inclusive of all people and not be discriminatory. And that's within the federal guidelines. It's just also very important because I think it sends a message to our children who are disabled. I personally have a mom of 2 children who are disabled. And I think that it sends a message, if we don't change this law, it sends a message that they're not smart enough, they're not good enough, that this is a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of, but you can't take advantage of it because you learn differently. So I think that it's important for us to really take a look at this and to really call in for legislative action. Now, CCRI, which is the Community College of Rhode Island, did state that they were willing to look at the policy and, adapt or make changes to that policy. And that's wonderful. However, we really want this to be written within the law because it really mandates for any institution that is created or in any other type of program to really be inclusive to those with disabilities. So it's beyond just, well, they're changing the policy, what's the big deal? It's about making sure that that verbiage that is actually written, within the law. It's also important that we take a look at that these children have been thriving with an IEP. My daughter, she has an IEP, which is an individual education plan, and she's had one since 1st grade, I believe, and she's now a 7th grader. That IEP has helped her advance. It really has helped her become successful within the education setting. So it's proof that this IEP, these individual education plans work. So why would we take that away from a child when they've been so successful in completing their coursework? It just doesn't make any sense. It's illegal and it's not inclusive. And when we think about any type of program, like I said before, especially surrounding education, we really have to be inclusive and we really have to uplift children who want to further their education, who want to be working individuals in the world and within society. And we shouldn't be hindering them in any way. We should be pushing them to be more successful and supporting them. And that's what it's about. So it's just important all around. I really like to make it clear that it's a bipartisan issue. It's a human rights issue. And it's something that should really be looked at from all sides. It's a human rights issue that we need to address. And we need to be clear that the law is clear, that we include everyone.
Beautiful. Tell me something. There's an H6505 bill presently the Senate is looking at. Now, we know this for a fact that based on what you were saying, we can actually state for a fact that there's discriminatory patterns evolving when it comes to education, the privileged and the underprivileged, and not just in Massachusetts or Rhode Island. This is a national situation, and this is a problem. At this present time, do you think the Joe Biden's administration given full thought, to the educational standards right now as it is, even with this discriminatory situation that continuously evolving? And this is something that just happened overnight. This has been going on for quite a bit. How do we think about, what do you think is a good way to transform the minds of the American people? But more importantly, is that your state rep has a very solid impact in this H6505 bill that can change the lives of this younger generation to come when it comes to school. I know this is a big a mouthful. I'm sorry, but in layman terms, let me make it short for you. Let me make it short for you. Do you think Joe Biden administration at this point will have a significant impact in how we see education from a discriminatory standpoint?
I am hopeful. I am really hopeful. I think it's a wonderful thing that the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, is really huge on education. She's an education champion. So that makes me feel very hopeful. I think that if she was made aware to this specific issue, I feel that because she's such an education champion, that she would want us to take a look at the guidelines that are within those policies. I also feel hopeful because, the state rep Michael Chippendale, he's actually a Republican. And this is a prime example of what a bipartisan relationship was supposed to look like. We're supposed to put policy before politics. And he's a wonderful example of, I'm a Democrat and obviously he's a Republican, but we're going to put that aside. We're going to address the issue, which is disability discrimination. And this is a perfect example that actually gives me such pride to work with him and to know that he is there for the people. He is there to be the voice for the voiceless. And this is what it should look like. This is what democracy really is. So I am hopeful if we have more Michael Chippendales in the mix and being a voice for the people, I think it'd be wonderful. I think that the future is brighter.
Well, I would definitely hope for that to happen. But viewing the atmosphere right now, with Republicans and Democrats, is not conducive for anyone to get anything done. I mean, Biden have great aspirations, but there's always a barricade there when it comes to Republicans they don't want to get anything done. They want to probably make the administration look like a losing administration. And despite how viable this...
Well, that's why I'm happy that Michael, it actually is kind of soothing to my soul, that he actually is a Republican. So I think that he is showing that, to change the narrative, to change that narrative of this divide, because there was such a huge divide in the past administration. And I think, if we have more Michael Chippendales to say, listen, that doesn't matter. We're going to put policy before politics and really address the issue. And he's a prime example of what it should be. And a perfect example to change the narrative. This is wonderful to have him on board to say, listen, when we work together, we get things done. And this is, people should look at this example. Heather approached Michael as a concerned mom, as a resident, as a constituent, and said, these are my issues, and this is the issue. I need your help. And he stepped in and he did that. And it's wonderful to see.
Beautiful. And Heather, what kind of language would you like to see when it comes to really rearranging the focus and the endowment of education here in America, in terms of everyone getting equal and fair treatment and access to good quality education, not from the standpoint that if you're slow, get behind, and there's no one who wants to dedicate and commit that time to you. And this puzzles me too, as a grandparent now actually. How can everyone cannot learn at the same rate? Should they be left on their own if they can't keep up to speed? So Heather, I'm asking you, what do you think, what should be the language going forward when it comes to education and equality for every student in America?
So that's a big question, and I have a few answers for that. Specifically, Bill H.R. 605, there are exceptions in the law for somebody who is in the military deploying or has a major medical crisis. I would love to see the bill reflect the age 18 with a year of high school, that flexible and course loads are allowed. And I want to see language that reincorporates or reinstates those families who've been pushed out of the program and given a bill. Those who stayed away because they were intimidated from the schedule, I want to see them have a chance to come back. Now, I think this bill brings up a great question. I keep asking, where was the representation? So when they were coming up with this program, did they have somebody with disabilities or representing the community at the table? If I was there, I'd like to think I'd say, wait a minute, there's a couple issues here. So nationally, it's representation is the answer. If you're going to create a program or a law that's going to impact individuals, make sure that somebody like us is taking a look. You're asking our opinion, our suggestions. That's the biggest step that you can take to make sure that these things don't happen and persons with disabilities are protected. And it also, everybody should keep in mind that there is legislation that does exist, the Rehab Act of 1974 and the Americans with Disabilities Act. They already provide these protections.
Yes.
So all we're doing is asking states to follow the law.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you think that there should be any amendments made to the Americans with Disability Act when it comes to even the same education? Just like the 1964 Bill of Rights Act, there are a lot of things that we should be doing, that government should be doing, but they're paying a very blind eye to reality. So is there anything you would like to see change with or amended rather, in the Americans with Disability Act?
To be frank, I know those laws kind of inside and out, and I think they're excellent.
Okay.
They have all those protections there. So ADA has Title I, Title II, Title III. I think the challenge lies in the accountability and ensuring that states, governments, education agencies are following the law. So perhaps we could have some more funding for the EEOS, the oversight agencies, to ensure that they're investigating complaints, they're assisting people who are coming to them asking for the help, and providing maybe some more education, especially leaders and legislators, so they're aware of the basic tenets of the law and that they're complying with them. So it doesn't happen where I'm coming in later going, excuse me, this is wrong, this is the law, you're not following it. So if anything, I'd just like to see maybe some increased funding to ensure that we're following the laws that exist.
Okay, one more question for you.
I definitely will agree with that. Policy oversight, I think, is something where we need to really take a look at. That we have to say, wait a minute, are you in compliance with the law? And this is not just happening in one area. This is happening across the board, where a lot of different institutions are benefiting from federal funding, from state funding. And there's no one really taking a look at and saying, well, wait a minute, are you in compliance with the law? And is this law inclusive? And does it follow, the guidelines of, so there definitely needs to be more policy oversight, more program oversight.
I just want to add, I want people to take into consideration ability. So I'm going to be open and forthright and say that I just completed my graduate degree, and I've been a college student with disabilities for about 15 years pursuing this goal. And some things I needed help, accommodations, and extra time, and I did it. So just because I needed a little bit of help doesn't mean that I'm not capable, that I'm not going to give back to society, and I'm not going to be productive. So that's what everybody needs to keep in mind. Just because we might have a different path to get there doesn't mean we're not going to get there or we're not going to excel.
Right.
And that's what's important.
Well, I'm glad you all, in terms of speaking on compliance, this may be a very difficult question, so either one can answer who think they have the answer or who think they can address it. Now, there are thousands of kids here who may not be legal in this country. Kids that should be in school. Mm-hmm. But probably at this point, they are in some shut-up cage or pen or round the borders or something. Now, should the United States of America government see out of the eye of mercy and compassion and give those children access, even though they are here illegal and not made legal, have access to some form of education until things are sorted out?
I'm going to say that's a no-brainer. Yes, obviously, they're humans. It doesn't matter where you're from, what your status is, or who you are. Everybody should be entitled to the basic human rights. And in my opinion, education is one of those.
Absolutely.
I would definitely have to second you on that, Heather. I totally, absolutely agree.
Okay. Do you think or know at this point if that is the atmosphere that are being introduced to these children at this point? Do you know if they are having access to education while they are pending investigations are being carried out, whether they could be considered refugee children looking for assistance
No.
or help? No, okay.
I don't think that's happening right now. That's I mean, I would have to do the research on that, but I'm gonna say no. I don't think that that's happening right now, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I just asked that for a specific reason. I just asked that for a specific reason. But nevertheless, I want to go ahead more in terms of inequality when it comes to education for kids in the United States of America. There are communities that are not so fortunate like some communities are, and rather than the children go to school and learn, they are probably out there pushing drugs or getting involved in crime, criminal activities, whatever the case may be. Is there any structured system presently that is put in place to manage the atmosphere of those children in a conducive way that they can go on to school and get a quality education, despite of what community that they are in?
I'm gonna say no. Just because typically those children that you're speaking of, their disabilities or their issues or their trauma that they're faced with isn't really looked at in that way. And I think a lot of times they become expelled, they become thrown out of school. And that is another whole show, but that is the bridge
Right.
for the prison, the pipeline. So I'm going to say no, that there's a lot of schools that don't really look at the totality of what a child is going through. And they're more quick to dismiss them and to throw them out, to expel them. I don't think that enough understanding and patience and trying to accommodate what their needs are. I mean, there's more children that are homeless that we don't even know about. I've done the research. I've gone out to schools and asked, what is one of the biggest issues that you're facing? And I've had teachers tell me homelessness. That there's children that come to school and this is their home. This is their shelter. This is their food. This is their,
right.
haven. So that's another whole issue that.
Right.
I want to add to that.
Yes.
So again, this is a great question and can lead to in-depth further discussions.
Oh God, yes.
There are examples of success. So as she mentioned, I call it the criminalization of mental illness. So mental health would be addressing that, especially at a younger age. That would be a great answer. Restorative justice programs, there's some great ones in California and urban schools. And they do a good job addressing these issues of education and understanding that these traumas and things exist. So I think that the idea is to research, find those ones that are doing the right things and having success in the programs, and then try to mirror that throughout the nation to address this issue.
Okay. Well, I want to take a brief look at the dichotomy of this H6505 bill. What are some of the things established in this bill that would be useful to really transform the outlook of education right now here, not just Rhode Island, but in the nation as a whole?
So I just want to quickly air it's Bill 5605. And I think it is as Monique mentioned earlier, we have people, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents working together on this. So one, that's a great example to the nation. People focusing on the issue, solving it, trying to improve society because of it, and beating that example, because there is that narrative that they can work together. And this bill is a perfect example of showing how it can be done. The language in the bill to allow accommodation and reduce course loads can be reflective throughout the nation, especially scholarships. So when you think about it, most scholarships offered to college students require a full-time status, and I don't think those exceptions and flexibility for those with disabilities exist. So I think this is a great time for other states and education programs that have these programs to review it and say, are we being accessible? Are we being discriminatory through our policies and actions?
Okay. Well, nothing here in this nation is new. This had been going on for probably decades and decades ago. What make you feel now at this point of time that it will be changed or can be changed?
This particular bill?
Yes.
I think that if enough people keep coming forward to show they care and to acknowledge that they've been impacted by this or that their kids might be impacted by this in the future, I think it's going to change. I think we're going to get this passed as long as everybody kind of hangs on and understands that the legislation process can kind of be slow going. We're slow going.
Do you ever had the kind of feeling that the senators and the state reps and all those who you elect to serve your interests, that they're just there about their own self-interest? They use this psychological maneuvering to get your vote. And then when that happens, you're thrown out through the window until that time comes again where they need your vote. Do you have a word for the American people? And this is serious because we see it play out every single day of our lives. That the senators and those who are in Congress, they don't really care so much about the needs of today's society. All they care about is their own self-interest. What word would you want to say, either one of you, what word would you want to say to your state rep, your senator, how imperative it is to get things done that are necessary for the everyday survival of the American people?
Well, I could speak that, and maybe that was the feelings, in the past. I feel like for some reason I think that this is a new year. I think that all the drama that we just endured for the past 4 years has really made a lot of people think about their position, their role within our society, and how we can all be involved. I mean, we've seen the higher numbers of voter turnout. We've seen more people be more involved and more interested to say, wait a minute, my voice matters, my vote matters. And we have more people speaking of accountability. And I think that I feel that there's a different feel.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's because we're like, whoo, we got past all the craziness for the past 4 years. So it makes you feel more relieved. Right. But I think that this is a new year, and I'm hopeful. And this, like I said, once again, this is a prime example of what that should look like. That anyone should be able to approach their state rep and say, this is the issue, and get the encouragement to work on this together. I have a new feeling of energy, and I'm hopeful.
Beautiful. Well, on that note, Monique, Heather, it was a pleasure having you here on the show on Living in the 21st Century. I hope we can look forward to speak on this matter again in the near future. But take good care and enjoy your day.
Thank you. You too.
Sure. Bye-bye.